be loud, and we're just gonna have to deal. So we're live. We're gonna do it. We're gonna let it breathe for a second. Get some eyeballs in here. Waiting for Buwana to give the sign. Buwana, we need like a cue card or like what are those marker? So
and it is
we got the check mark. So we're good to go. All right, Carl. Well, the floor is yours for now. I guess how are you doing? Welcome in, everybody. This is Building the Broncos. And Carl, I gotta say, are those new glasses?
These are new glasses. My old ones broke on Thank you. My old ones broke on vacation. And I told my wife, I said, you know what? It's time for a dramatic change in my glasses. And
I'm into it. The beard's back. You look good, man. You need to calm down a little bit. But.
I know. My wife was not a fan. She just looked at him. She goes, I'll adjust. I was like, oh, come on, honey. You're supposed to be like, you look like the sexiest man alive. I did not get that.
Is that Clark Kent? No, yeah, for sure. That's looking good, man. I was blessed with 2015 vision last time I had my eyes checked, but with the amount of computer work that I do, probably not the case anymore. So I've never even been to an optometrist. It was like a physical where I was able to read the lines. But besides that, speaking of people who might need their eyes changed, maybe we'll get to some Judy today. That was a low blow. I'm sorry. I'm here for the comedy. Nobody's above the memes. That's going on my tombstone. But welcome into Building the Broncos. We love y'all. How you doing, Carl?
I'm doing all right. It's been kind of a crazy week. I've got you understand it too. I got a funeral tomorrow. So getting everything ready for that is always kind of a crazy time, but got a good support cast that's helping me out with all that. So, but otherwise had a really good time with family over Christmas and just kind of settling back into regular schedule. How was your Christmas, man?
My Christmas was okay. We slept in the basement on the floor with the cat because he can't jump up anywhere because of his surgery that he had. But he's actually off in a vet clinic right now. Maybe he's going to get the stitches out. It's a check. So at some point, my wife's going to walk through a door over there. It will probably be loud, and I will apologize for that. We have Christmas bells on the door so the dog lets us know when it has to go outside. So it works, but it'll probably be loud. So I'll try to mute it, but when that happens, guys, I apologize. But other than that, no, pretty good. I got a lot of hiking gear. And I got some really fancy, snazzy new glassware as well from the wife, which I said, babe, these are absolutely glorious. I'm a fan of this D specifically. Yes. And we should bring it back. # bring back the D. And I might be enjoying an adult beverage at some point here. Actually, excuse me, orange juice. It's not an adult beverage, guys. It's OJ.
There you go. But, got some vitamin C in it, right?
Yeah, God, I need one. Today work was so chaotic. But we're here now. We're talking football, and the chaos doesn't end, but that makes me so happy. And speaking of things that can be a little chaotic, I know that we got some bettors out there, guys. Tonight's live stream podcast is brought to you by sportsbetting.com. Broncos country gambling is now legal in the great state of Colorado. And here's what makes sportsbetting.com a no-brainer for all sports fans out there. Sportsbetting.com has sharp odds and low juice. They have in-house bookmakers. They're not a provider of third-party odds, which is great, which means they also have reduced juice and the best prices. They also have a hassle-free bonuses with a one-time rollover, which means the money is yours just after betting one time. Other sites, sometimes you have to kind of build that credit betting 5 to 30 times. If you want to be in and out, one and done maybe, like hopefully the Chiefs are in the playoffs this year, you can bet one time. So that's great. They also have 24/7 live customer support. So always a real person answers you, which is fantastic. I've been on the phone today with people who, some robots that kind of transfer me over, and that's really frustrating. We've all been there. And here's the kicker. At sportsbetting.com/Mile High Huddle, you can get a 100% risk-free week of sports betting up to $750. Not just one bet, but every single one of your bets. College football bowls are here. And while maybe some of these bowl games are a little bit boring, like, Alabama's probably going to beat the snot out of Notre Dame. Sorry to any Irish fans out there, but putting a little action on the game, that makes it that much more interesting. So not just one of your bets either. Bet on all of them. Bet on the NFL games, bet on the NBA, bet on college. We're about it. I mean, they're here for us. Play for a week, and if your losses exceed your winnings at the end of the week, sportsbetting.com/Mile High Huddle will cover 100% of the difference, up to $750 with a one-time rollover. So again, go to sportsbetting at www.sportsbetting.com/Mile High Huddle. That's www.sportsbetting.com/Mile High Huddle and capitalize on a risk-free week of sports betting up to $750. What a deal. And also, guys, make sure you find us on Twitter. We have the great Carl Dumler with his sexy new glasses at Carl Dumler MHH. And also, guys, follow Buwana Beast. He's the man working the keys behind the scenes. We wouldn't be here without him at John K MHH. And follow myself at Nick Kendell MHH. Also, guys, if you're joining us today via YouTube, do us a huge favor, like, subscribe, and share our show. That can help us continue to bring you these shows. It's not just this show you're helping. It's Chad and Zach with the Huddle Up Podcast. It's Lance and Eric with the Dove Valley Deep Divers. It's Luke and myself with the Mile High Insiders. Also on Facebook, click those thumbs up, laugh, react, heart react, angry face. We're going to be talking about some controversial stuff today. So if you're upset, I don't even care. Drop the angry react. We'll get to it. Also, guys, don't make sure you miss any of our great in-season content, soon to be off-season content at milehighhuddle.com, an affiliate of Sports Illustrated and part of the Maven Coalition, brought to you by Overtime Media. Okay, so today we are talking about probably the elephant in the room. It's probably going to be a conversation that's going to be ad nauseum, beating a dead horse. I know that's maybe a little bit of a dad joke there, but Drew Lock, who's coming off a solid performance. It wasn't like, watching Aaron Rodgers on Sunday night tear apart the Tennessee Titans, but he had an okay game. I think a good enough game where they could have won that game. And Judy dropped the ball. Again, another dad joke. We're just leaning into it today. I haven't even started drinking my orange juice yet. But Drew Lock, Bob Morris over at Mile High Huddle had a interesting article today or yesterday. I read it today where he talked about just the logistics of the Broncos being in the quarterback conversation in the draft. A lot of people right now, it's sometimes the internet can be a toxic place. I feel like it's been more so in 2020 than ever. There's probably plenty of reasons for that, but Broncos country is not excluded from that toxicity. There's still, you guys are the best, but some people can get a little bit at each other. The anti-Lock, people cheering for him to fail versus the people who, he walks on water to them. But we're here to break down that middle ground. We're not about playing those sides. We're not here for the hot takes. We just want to talk about all the solutions, all the possibilities. And Bob Morris lays it out here as that the Broncos are going to have an interesting time if they are going to be after a quarterback in this draft. So just your preliminary thoughts on that concept.
Yeah, here's what we said at the beginning of the season. The worst place the Broncos could be at the end of the year is still not sure whether Drew Lock is the quarterback or not.
And we said that, just aside, we said that knowing full well that was probably the most likely scenario.
Unfortunately, he'd either have to have one of those, kind of like Justin Herbert seasons, where you're looking at what he is and you're going, okay, he is the future for the Chargers. Unfortunately, that is not what he did this year. He had his flashes. He had his great games. The 4 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. You're going, oh my gosh, look at this guy. You're looking at Houston last year. You're going, look at this. He's got some big playability. And then at the same time, he also did where he grew over the last about 5-6 games of the season. And you're kind of going, okay, well, there's some glimpses, but it's not enough to sit here and say that he is the guy or he isn't the guy. And one thing that Bob brought up was that the Broncos are going to, unfortunately, probably find themselves in a weird draft position because we're going to talk about that a little bit more, where they could be either clear up to the 5th pick. The odds of that happening are very, very slim, or clear back to the 15th pick if they win this week. And I saw somebody ask the question earlier in our comments, is it better for the Broncos to win this week or to lose? Well, I think you can find good and bad from both. I think you just got to, if you're a positive person, you look at a loss and say, hey, well, at least it got them better draft position. If they win, it's like, hey, at least they ended on a good note. The players can really hopefully carry that over into the next season because you're going to have a lot of young guys who are going to be starting this game. So it's kind of you can look at it both ways. But it's the Broncos are stuck in that kind of limbo spot where they might just kind of have to, and I'm trying to say have to, that they're going to be there with Drew Lock next year again. And that's not the worst thing ever, because like I said, he has shown glimpses.
Not at all, yeah. There's far worse positions to be in.
Yeah, there is. And a full offseason, second year in the system, there's a lot of things that you could look at and say there's reason for optimism that this offense is going to take off next season. But
maybe take off a little extreme, but take steps forward into competency.
Okay, there you go. And second year for a lot of guys, it's not even just about Drew Lock. Jerry Jeudy, yes, he just had worst game of his probably life this last weekend. Yeah, easily. And he knows that, and he'll get better. People who are calling him a bust after that one bad game, or even after a mediocre rookie season, come on. I hope we're better than that to realize that guys need time to grow. We've talked about wide receiver Cortland Sutton. He didn't have a great rookie season. Now he looks like he's possibly one of the top 10 wide receivers in football. Devontae Adams, maybe the best wide receiver in football this season. he didn't light up the scoreboard his first few years in the league. This is his first year.
Rodgers.
Right. And I think this is his first year of actually going over 1,000 yards receiving. I think that's right. Because you and I had that talk of why I didn't have him in my top 5. And
we both need to own that really hard. You had not Devontae Adams in your top. Was he maybe not even your top 10? I feel like he was missing from your top 10.
He might have been.
And I didn't have Derrick Henry in my top 10 because I thought he was limited. But you know what? Now I kind of get, when you're that much of a freak, I'm all about the athletic freaks right now. Mekhi Becton, Tristan Wirfs hitting, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Kyler Murray, like the guys who are the athletic freaks. Garrett Bowles finally working out. There's something to be said about guys who are bigger, faster, and stronger. Maybe I am becoming Al Davis. If I start looking like the keeper of the crypt from Goosebumps, you guys let me know. But that's something to be said for that.
Yeah, he was just ahead of his time. That's the problem. And it's kind of like I saw somebody earlier talking on the Facebook super chat page about Kyle Trask. And I said 10 to 15 years ago, his draft stock would have been a lot higher than it is now. Yeah. Because pocket passers were all the rave. Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, all those kind of guys. Well, in today's NFL,
like a highlight of him, it's literally just quick passes. Half of them ducks. Yeah. Getting the ball quickly to Tony and who's probably a late first round pick, and Pitts, who will probably go top 15. So
right. I'm not disagreeing. I'm just saying that his type of quarterback play doesn't really fit today's NFL. You're not seeing many of the young pocket passers because they're not given the time to learn how to read a defense quickly enough to get the ball out of their hands before the defense gets there. You need a guy that can make plays off schedule. And really the only guy I can think of that you could call a pocket passer that has kind of worked out in the NFL of the last probably 10 drafts, Jared Goff.
And I was just going to say, the Broncos were talking about the situation they're in, half full, half empty. I'm like, well, at least they aren't in a situation where they're paying a quarterback that they're either moving on from, Eagles with Wentz, or one who's obviously holding the team back. I mean, I'll just say it flat out. Paying Goff, I mean, if you get any sort of pressure on him at all, he just wilts. I mean, he's fine when everything's perfect and clean, but that's not the case. If he didn't have arguably a top 3 offensive mind calling his offense in Sean McVay, obviously the other 2 I would say would be Kyle Shanahan and Andy Reid, I think he'd be out of the league. Yeah, I don't think he's anything special. So
no, I'm with you. So that's why I'm saying again, Kyle Trask being that guy that you go after. I have a hard time seeing how he works in the NFL. But here we have Stu McPeak, one of our favorites. Thank you so much for the super chat and love the picture. I'm pretty sure United is one that flies the Broncos, right?
I cannot tell you.
Okay, I think they are. So appreciate your company and taking care of the Broncos this year and a lot of other teams, I'm sure. But always appreciate you tuning into the show, and it's just always warms my heart to see Stu McPeak pop up on our screen.
Yeah, no, I mean, what a great guy. Love you, Stu. Hope you're doing well. I think he's down in Houston now. He left as soon as I came to Seattle. I think he knew what was up. He's like, oh, that Nick guy's coming up here. Let me get the heck out of town. But yeah. No, thank you so much. So we'll definitely get a chance to talk some Kyle Trask, another guy where he might be a good quarterback, but just because of where I'm at right now as an evaluator in the position, like Mac Jones might be good. I'm not going to take him. I'm going to let somebody else take a chance on him because I do not trust the tools. So it will be interesting. He could go first round, and I think he actually fits the Shermer offense well. I just don't think those guys succeed in today's NFL long term. I think he's very close to a ceiling, and also we're seeing Tua struggle a lot this year. Mac Jones is playing just as well. So it's a bunch of things where you're kind of eyebrow raising. I got to lean on those traits. It's really becoming more of a trait position again, where those guys can have that. You're allowed much more of an air bar when you can rely on those athletic traits while you are developing the mental part of your game. I mean, you talk about like a guy like Josh Rosen. Everybody talked about how intelligent and brilliant he was on his college team. Smartest football player on UCLA. Comes to the NFL, he's one of the dumbest players on the team because you just don't have that experience. It's a totally different game. So you got to have those traits to lean on.
Right. Well, you think about in college, most of those systems these days, they have the cards on the sideline that they hold up, and that's the play. NFL, they get to all of a sudden they have a 25-word play that tells them everything, and then they get to the line, and there's 5 different options within that one play of what the defense is looking at. Is what then you have to do with that. And it does. It takes time to really read that, understand that, and to move forward. That's why I think the Herbert season, even the Joe Burrow season, is really impressive. You talked about it with the offensive line, but I think just even the shortened off season with them being able to learn their offense and play at a high level with so many things working against them is pretty impressive. I think they are the exception, not the rule.
Yeah, absolutely. And we got Willie G coming in here with an interesting comment. The only quarterback in this draft that isn't a 50-50 coin flip bust is Lawrence. I mean, even Lawrence could bust. That's the thing about the NFL draft. There are guys who can't miss that bust every time. But, you also have a chance to get a guy who can be completely game-changing for your franchise. So don't be afraid to take a shot. I'd rather take a shot and it explode miraculously or spectacularly than piddle around in that 5 to 8 range year after year after year, which is,
right.
I mean, like this year, the Broncos, once again, it's like they drop all these games early and they're obviously out of the playoff hunt. And then they start to win some games in the middle. It's like, yeah, they're winning. That's great. But like, there's no real destination to that winning because you're already so far back and not making the playoffs. So it's frustrating, but yeah.
I wanted to get to this question here by Thomas Dowd. It's not really a question. Like I said, you guys would have cut Elway. I don't like Shermer, but there's not going to keep paying all these coaches they have fired. So one, no, I would not have quit on Elway. I haven't quit on Locke. All we've done, and this is what drives me crazy. You cannot be a black and white, it's either or kind of thing. Football is such a nuanced game that, I mean, even look at Green Bay right now. They just drafted a first-round quarterback while they have Aaron Rodgers because they're not sure how much more he's a part of their future. And some were questioning because his game was going downhill till this season. He was having worse and worse seasons. So some were kind of going, okay, is he done? Is he spent? He's had some injuries. There's nuance to this. And for us, we see the flashes with Locke. You cannot sit here and tell me that you have looked at this season and say, Locke is the guy of the future.
I mean, some people might, but they might have other influences going on, some biases or, there are positives there, but with Locke, it's been too inconsistent overall. Right. He is trending the correct direction, which is good. It's what you want. And it's what makes this that much more of a difficult conversation to have because there is upside and there are traits that you want. I mean, we were preaching traits earlier, and I think Locke has the bare minimum athleticism that I would be willing to accept, but he's got the ability to make some plays off script. Granted, the accuracy kind of goes away when he does that, or he throws picks into idiot territory and it's an interception. Quit doing that, Locke. But there are tools there to get better, and I think he is getting better. And this is such a young offense. I mean, I was watching the game last week, and I don't think it's so much about Jerry Jeudy being bad and the argument with Locke. Where are the people talking about how good this offensive line is looking? Now I get it. They were missing Ingram, Bosa, Nwosu. Like that's a totally different team, just like the Broncos were totally different. But this offensive line is really starting to gel. I mean, right tackle, who the hell knows? But like Bowles, all three guards they have, and Cushenberry is playing his best football. This offensive line is humming. Melvin Gordon's starting to be the guy you want. I mean, there's plenty of positives here to talk about it. But I mean, it's always, and it always will be about the quarterback. It comes down to that. But that's frustrating. So we should probably get into these three factors that Bob has just real quick, and I'd like to parse through them. So let's go through this first one first, and then we can kind of get back to the comment section here. So the first one, I love Bob. This one I absolutely hate. I almost wish he was here to defend himself. The Broncos' record under Locke is his first point. The Broncos have won far more games when Locke has been at quarterback, and he attributes that to the reason that the Broncos need to lean on Locke. And Carl, I guess before I spout on that, what are your thoughts on that comment?
Well, I'd say one, I can understand over the longevity of a career, looking at wins and in some ways tying them to quarterbacks, but there still always has to be, I keep using this word, but nuance in that thought process. So like Matthew Stafford, I have had him as a top 10 quarterback in the NFL for most of his career, but he's on such a terrible team. His record is not great. A lot of people point to his record or lack of going to the playoffs and say, look at this, he is terrible. No, he's just been on a lot of terrible teams that he's had to play from behind, and he's tried to make up for that. He's had some bonehead throws, but he's had to make some aggressive throws because of what the team is doing. Where, I look at like Peyton Manning. He's a guy that I think that there are a few quarterbacks in the league that you can almost bank that if they start every game, they are going to win at least 10 games, no matter the roster around them. You could stick them on the Jaguars or the Jets right now, and they could still be possibly a 10-win team. That's the Peyton Mannings. That's the I would even say Aaron Rodgers, Patrick Mahomes, those types. So you can look at wins tied to them in some ways. But there are most quarterbacks, I would, especially young quarterbacks, I would not tie wins and losses to trying to prove whether they are good or bad.
I'm going to be a total nerd for a second, but when it comes down to statistical analysis, there's not much predictive power unless you have a large enough sample size. Yep. And last year when people were banking on Locke going 4-1 down the stretch, how many competent teams did he actually play down the stretch? Houston had a bottom 5 defense. I think Detroit and the the then Oakland Raiders had the second and first worst defenses, pass defenses in the entire NFL. And while there was competency shown there, a lot of that is determined by the opponent when the sample size is so small. So, and also when you see games over a long period of time, you're going to have games where the New England game, players dropping touchdowns and just really letting Locke down. Locke had a great game that game, or even this Chargers game. Locke had a solid game, players around and let him down. But then you have the Bills game and the Chiefs game where there's a couple games where defenders were dropping interceptions left and right. And it could have been much worse, even though the stats show otherwise. So over time, you're going to see things normalize. You're going to see them start to just kind of regress to the mean, and you're going to figure out who a guy is. So that's why sample size is big. This is also one where, what's Locke at now? 17 starts? Like you're going to kind of start to get an idea of who he is going to be after that many starts. He's also, I think, 24 years old already, which is obviously not old, but like for a quarterback that's in his second year, that's not young. Trey Lance is not going to be 21 until May. And he'll be in the league for 3 years before Drew Lock's rookie season kind of thing. So that matters. So I don't know. It's a hard conversation. I think he's heading the correct direction. But how high is that ceiling? What's the attainable ceiling? You know, like it's so sporadic. You have that Panthers game and the Texans game, which there were obviously good flashes, the Chargers game, but there's a lot of bad as well. So what is that ceiling and how does he get there? I mean, a lot of people will point to, I know we've been pointing to Josh Allen. People have been pointing to Josh Allen. People have been pointing to Matt Stafford. People have been pointing to John Elway. You look at the infrastructure around Drew Lock and this team over the last few years versus what those guys had when they came in. I mean, it's night and day difference. This offense is young, no doubt. It's young. It's going to be up and down, which we've seen this season. But there's so much talent. Yeah. I mean, you type out the roster and it's like, man, you plug in a average quarterback there. This team's probably making the playoffs. There's just so much talent.
No, I'm with you there. And I don't want to look at record for trying to decide whether Locke is good or bad.
Mitch Trubisky versus Deshaun Watson. Which quarterback are you taking? Because one of them's winning all these games recently, and one of them's the team has earned the 3rd overall pick. Bill O'Brien's an idiot, and he trades everything. But, I mean, seriously, quarterback wins is not a thing. I get stupider every time I read it.
Yeah, I'm with you. And, it's same with Justin Herbert. There have been a lot of games that they have lost just because their defense gives up a ton of points and yards, and he's trying to do everything he possibly can. He can go out there, throw 4 touchdowns, and still lose a game.
If only Justin Herbert would have stopped the other team from scoring 50 points.
Yeah. I would throw that one out, me personally, when I'm looking at it. The only thing I'd look at for record would be then tied to his last point. I guess we can kind of jump to the 3rd point and come back to the second. But it is the fact that draft position.
Yeah.
If they get to the 5th overall, again, the odds of that happening are very, very slim. Yeah. You have to have that conversation about the other quarterbacks.
You have to have it now.
Well, yeah, you do. But I think you have it more at 5 compared to 15.
Yeah.
And so because the odds of you being back to that kind of spot in the draft anytime, hopefully in the next 4 or 5 years, is pretty slim.
Yeah.
Unless Drew Lock really bottoms out kind of thing. And so yes, you have to. Right. And so you have to have that conversation if you are in position to go get one of those guys where you can have them for 5 years on a rookie contract. And if you think that they have a higher ceiling than Drew Lock, then again, you have to have that kind of conversation. Now we can talk about whether Lock has a higher ceiling than Justin Fields or Wilson or as somebody else said earlier, Trey Lance, because you've been talking about him today a little bit.
Yeah, we should get back to that comment too. We saw it. I saw it out there, Bwana. We'll get back to some Trey Lance. Oh, here it is right now. Trey Lance, what is there to like about Trey Lance? What stands out for you? Strongest arm in the class, probably the best athlete in the class too. Raw, the accuracy can be a little bit erratic, but he takes care of the football. And right now, how Jalen Hurts is playing with Philadelphia, Trey Lance is making money because of how good Jalen Hurts is, because Trey Lance has a better arm and he's a better athlete. I mean, I've heard some people that I've made connections with at the scouting combine that said, like, comp that we love for Trey Lance is Steve McNair. Like, like Steve McNair in today's NFL would be top 5 quarterback easily.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's something to be said there. He's a huge boomer bust prospect because the level of play, because the 1 year of starting experience, how young he is. I mean, he is. I mean, there's no doubt about it. You're taking a massive risk taking him, but the upside is just, I mean, the highest in this class, higher than Trevor Lawrence. The upside is higher than Trevor Lawrence because the tools are better. I don't think it's an attainable upside, but if everything hits, his upside is higher than Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah. And that's the tough part there is he really needed this season to show that some of what he showed last year was not a fluke.
Yeah.
And two, to also then grow on what he showed, because there are some, like you said, there are some inconsistencies with accuracy. There are some issues of, can he get through all of his reads, or is he in a one read system?
It reads like Josh Allen coming out.
Yeah, it does. And, again, Josh Allen took 3 years to really start showing at an MVP kind of level. Do you have time to wait for that? And this coaching staff, I don't think they have time to wait for that. That's part of the discussion when it comes to a guy like that, of can they draft him and hope that they're going to be around when it starts paying off?
Yeah, it's a really difficult conversation to have. It's one that we're going to have multiple times this offseason, and we're already at almost a half hour, which, I mean, we're not going to be able to parse through every single thing. I mean, Drew Lock is already going to be 25 years old next year. He's already missed a significant chunk of time, 2 seasons in a row. So there's durability questions. You're in a division where the ceiling, I mean, he's obviously never going to be Patrick Mahomes, but like the 3rd, 4th best quarterback in the division, is that good enough? You have to have like a top 15 defense and one of the better offensive structures around him to win the division. And that could be, that's just as dependent on staying healthy as, having that roster around you. So there's a lot of conversation to be had there about it. We got Michael Luetti coming in here. If I pronounced that wrong, I apologize. A really cute picture of you and your daughter. My heart's melting. I don't like the idea of Denver taking someone who needs a lot of work. They cannot develop quarterbacks. That's clear. I mean, the same thing was said about the Chiefs before they took Patrick Mahomes. They were like 50 years since they had a quarterback that they drafted win a football game before Mahomes. There was some crazy statistic like that.
Yeah.
So all it takes is one. You just have to hit that guy right. And again, it's as much luck as it is skill hitting that guy. You see that every year. But all it takes is that one guy. So
that's just it. Is quarterback is probably the hardest position to figure out, even with all the top scouts and everything else. I mean, Patriots got lucky for 20 years getting a guy in the 6th round. They didn't even believe in him. If they believed in him, he would have gone in the 1st round. Yeah. I can't remember who was the analyst. That was the Colts GM that said they had a 1st round grade on Tom Brady.
Bill Polian, probably.
Yeah, I think it was. And I'm like, come on, no, you don't pass on a guy if you have a 1st round grade cleared to the 6th round. But whatever. Anyway, and then like even Russell Wilson, again, 3rd round guy.
Dak Prescott.
We're
talking anomalies, though.
Yes, yeah,
Massive
exactly.
Anomalies.
And so, yeah, I'm with you. The hard part is always having a front office that has the patience to wait for those players to develop, that you have trust in your coaching staff of, hey, they are going to work out well with this guy, and also then working to build your entire system around that player. Those are the teams that have the most success. Lamar Jackson with Baltimore, Josh Allen with Buffalo. Even the Cardinals a little bit. I'd say the Cardinals are still struggling some with trying to figure out Kyler Murray and that offense. They've been kind of inconsistent on some of their things. But I wanted to get to Kenneth Booker's question here. Appreciate the super chat. Are there any can't miss guys to draft, quarterback, linebacker, wide receiver?
I would say it depends on how you define can't miss. I would say Trevor Lawrence is can't miss, but it's still the NFL draft. So there's a reality out there where he busts. Like a lot of the questions that Trevor Lawrence has especially a year ago at this time, are the same ones you have with Justin Fields right now, as far as he's a one read guy. They have such a talent difference than the guys that are playing. And he struggled really bad against Georgia Tech last year. And he struggled in both playoff games as well. So, I would still say he's can't miss, but he's not perfect. There are warts. There are questions. There's a reality where he does miss. I would say a lot of people would say Micah Parsons is can't miss. That's kind of a little bit debated because he's so raw. But I mean, again, I'm all in on the traits right now. We've been the past few years. It really seems like guys who are, as long as they have football passion. How's their football intelligence and the work ethic? Guys with those type of traits hit. So probably people would say Parsons. There's no real Devin White's the closest one I can think of that's built like him as far as an athletic specimen, but Parsons is a little bit more raw. So that's concerning. Wide receiver, it's a pretty good wide receiver class this year. I think that Chase and Waddle and Smith are all can't miss to some degree, but none of them are like Julio Jones, Calvin Johnson level. The only guy who's a can't miss there's two can't miss prospects I'd say in this class, Penei Sewell and Trevor Lawrence. After that,
all they check almost every single box that you could have. Yeah, I mean, really at the top of the draft, you're kind of looking at the guys who do I have that checks everything. Yeah, and then after that, after about the top 5 guys, usually then you start going, okay, what areas am I okay not being fully known? And then we kind of go from there. You're right.
It's such a weird view, though, because a lot of the guys that would be in that conversation opted out. Penei Sewell opted out. Micah Parsons opted out. Caleb Farley opted out. Gregory Rousseau opted out. Those are all guys who had been continuously mocked in the top 5, top 10 over the offseason, and they didn't play. Yep. And then you have guys like, the Ohio State cornerback, Sean Wade, who many people thought was a top 10 cornerback. He would have been smarter to opt out because people were like, oh, yeah, he's got all these tools. He'll be an easy transition on the outside. He struggled on the boundary. So this is the weirdest year for the draft ever. It will be. I don't know what's going to happen. That's another reason I feel like people are going to be quarterback heavy at the top, because outside of the quarterback in the top 10 and Penei Sewell, it's a bunch of like, I think this guy's worth this pick, but it's not, you don't have the same sample size, coming back to sample size, everyone drank, as you do typical seasons. So
it is. You'd said it last week, I think. This is one of those drafts you would think about trading back just so you get more eggs in the basket.
But there's also the opposite argument where like guys that you are sure about, like I'm making sure that I'm getting this guy because I trust him. Yeah. I think every team's going to differ too. Yeah.
It could be a crazy year for trades.
Yes.
You're going to see those teams that are really aggressive and then those who are just like, let's just wait for 2022.
I think it's going to be more like last year where there's not many trades. You're not having people congregate drinking in bars and stuff where a lot of these deals are hammered out. I mean, the combine, these guys are meeting and they're like, oh, what do you think of, after their 10th beer? There are some heavy drinkers at the NFL combine, guys. Let me tell you, it's weird seeing a general manager kind of stumble around the bar. Yeah. But so weird. Let's get the John Huston here real quick. What's your opinion of we lose and are around draft pick 8-ish? How do you guys feel about Zach Wilson? I feel like he's boomer bust. One good season. Zach Wilson had a good season 2 ago. He was injured last year. He is a little older for the quarterback prospect or position, which I think that matters. There's a historical precedence for quarterback. They take a step forward age 20. They take a step forward age 23. And they take a step forward age 26. Obviously, it's different for every quarterback, but that's what the historical trend is. So Zach Wilson will be older. I mean, Mormon prospect. Typically, they come out older. But I think he's got a lot of traits. I did see that one of my favorite quarterback analysts out there is Derek Clausen, QB Class on Twitter, at QB Class KLASS. We had him on the show here a couple years ago. Actually, it was the draft leading up to the Drew Lock draft. And he said, like, okay, tell me what I'm seeing here and what's the difference between Drew Lock and Zach Wilson. So, I mean, there's people out there's questions about every single one of these guys out there. So it'll be interesting. I do like Zach Wilson. I'm not ready to be or asking any of these people out on dates yet. I am texting all of them. I would be, in the DMs of Zach Wilson, Trey Lance, and Justin Fields, because while Drew Lock and I are dating, we're not exclusive. If somebody
got an open relationship.
Yeah. Like Drew Lock, he's cute. He's a good girl. He's, hairdresser or whatever going on. But now there's this 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10 who's in med school. And I'm sliding in the DMs, Instagram model kind of, it's like, I'm not sold on this one totally. I just got to kind of see what's going on over here. So I'm not ready to commit to it either, but I'm just, shooting my shot. That's where I'm at on quarterbacks.
So I would say right now, Wilson is my number 2 at quarterback, but we still have a lot of evaluation time that's going to happen over these next few months. So I'm not completely sold that he's my number 2 yet. We shall see. I like him a lot. I like his game. I think he's got himself a quick release. He's highly accurate. I do question some things, such as he has been in the same system. So
his offensive line was phenomenal this year. He had a lot of time.
Right.
He did not have to deal with a lot of pressure.
if I remember right, his weapons are guys that have been with him since high school. So how does he adjust to all of a sudden going from these guys that he has known most of his life to all of a sudden Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton, and having to get on the same page with them, learning a new offense. He's got himself, like I said, he's got a quick release. He seems like he's got a quick mind to get the ball out of his hands in a hurry. He's creative, which is something, again, that you need in the NFL. But will he still be that creative player again when he's in this new system learning everything? So I do have some real questions. If he is there,
curly hair gang, how you doing, Jay? Sorry.
If he is there at 8, it would be hard to pass up. I'm not sure how much I want to trade up to go get him.
And because, a lot of this is, it's a weird offseason. A lot of it's going to come down to stuff that we're not privy to. That's what's so frustrating about this. We have the tape, which is very all well and dandy, and we can make grand sweeping draws from that. But like how the guy does 1-on-1 or 2-on-1 in the whiteboard session, in the throwing session, in the film room, that kind of stuff, like that matters so much for the quarterback position because you're figuring out a guy who meshes personality wise with your coaching staff that's there, how they fit the scheme. That's just stuff we don't get to see.
Right.
And that's something like, like I thought Josh Rosen or maybe even Dwayne Haskins, guys that both flamed out, both I thought first round picks, NFL did too, obviously. Both of them thought top of the first round level first round picks or top half of the first round picks, both flamed out. You're not really seeing that interaction with the coaching staffs, the whiteboard, the film room. So that's a huge gap in the quarterback evaluation that makes it almost impossible to get it exactly right from here.
Yeah, for sure. And it's also hard where I know part of the Washington football team with their quarterback that just flamed out, that the front office loved him. The coaching staff hated him. Yeah. So they can interview well with one group and look terrible with another. And so then there's this disconnect. It was the same thing with Paxton Lynch. Kubiak did not want Lynch. He told Elway, I don't like this guy. I've got my guy in Simeon. And Elway fell in love with Lynch because he fell in love with the tools and said, this guy can really develop into something. And
didn't have the football character, though.
Yeah.
Arm talent, athleticism, not football character.
Right. And so, those things we're not completely privy to. But I like a lot of the players that could be there at 8. I think there's a lot of directions the Broncos could go that I could really agree with on this season. They could go with pass rusher because there are going to be some really good pass rushers at the top of this draft. I don't think it's a very deep pass rusher draft, but there are some decent guys at the top that could develop into some high quality players. You got some cornerbacks like Farley that I really, really like. That I think I think would be a great fit and a guy that can really develop into a top 10 cornerback in the NFL.
Eric and I are going to throw hands over Farley because he keeps saying J.C. Horn number 1, and I just do not see the athletic traits for J.C. Horn. He's I don't either. He's a first round pick. Don't get me wrong, but I don't think he's a top half of the first round pick at cornerback any draft.
Yeah, and so then of course Micah Parsons, athletic freak. You got some even offensive tackle. If Sewell somehow falls, I doubt that could possibly happen because you got so many teams that need offensive tackle, and he is a generational talent. At least I think he's going to be a generational talent. We'll see. But so
he has a hard act to follow with how incredible Becton, Wirfs, and Wills have been. There's NFL. It's not a secret right now. They keep talking. They say that Sewell's really good. He is at or behind last year's Big Four, which again speaks to this year's class. It's just last year's class was really, really good. Yeah. Really, really good. And this year, I'm just not sure it stacks up the same. Not every 10th overall pick every single year is the same because it really depends on the class. Go look at the 2013 draft versus the 2011 draft and tell me that the picks are the same. So we got John Huston coming in again. Locke kind of gets a raw deal. 2 rookie wide receivers, no vets on offense. Like he gets shit on when it's not nearly all his fault. Wilson's really old. Wilson's not really old. He's 21. Is he only 21? I thought he was going to be 22 by the time the season started, which is a little bit older for a quarterback. But we'll see. I thought he was older than that.
I can't remember either off the top of my head. And yes, these are the things that you look at. If you're looking at the optimistic side of Locke, you sit there and say, hey, he has had, like I said, kind of a raw deal this year. 2 rookie wide receivers that have been trying to figure things out that have been very up and down. Lost his number 1 wide receiver week number 2. Tight end, his number 1 tight end has been injured for half the season. Offensive line has been trying to figure it out with some rookies, and right tackle being all over the board. So yeah, you look at all those things and you sit there and say, okay, he has really put the last 5 weeks, he's looked a lot better. And so you look at that and say, okay, these are the signs that he's improving and things are going to be better next year. And I don't disagree with that.
And I have no issue with them running it back with him next year.
Yeah, I don't either.
I do have an issue if they run it back with him and like, you know what? Let's also bring in Jeff Driscoll. Like that one will get just massive boost for me. And somebody asked earlier if they brought in Locke, if they would bring in somebody else and what that would mean about Locke's ability if he failed, or if that's a good thing or bad thing. I look at it kind of like I look at Carson Wentz this year, where they brought in Jalen Hurts and Carson Wentz. I mean, Carson Wentz's issues with Nick Foles got him traded at first, and they brought in a quarterback, and Carson Wentz essentially had shut down mentally and failed. And I think there's the indictment. If they bring in, let's say, I don't know, Andy Dalton or Tyrod Taylor for a starter, and Drew Lock, has an issue with that and fails because of that, that's all you need to know. Like that's the indictment. He couldn't get it done because they brought in Tyrod Taylor.
Right.
You're not a dude. You're not a dude
right.
then. So.
Well, I mean, look at Aaron Rodgers this year. They bring in a first-round quarterback. He's having one of the best seasons of his career.
Exactly.
Those are the guys. I mean, Tom Brady, he saw them bring in quarterback Jimmy G, and he went out and still played at a high level. I'm trying to think of some of the other guys that they used a couple different like second, third round picks on quarterbacks.
Yep.
Peyton Manning, I think they used, if I remember right, they used a first round pick on a quarterback at one point. And even when he was here in Denver, Brock Osweiler getting drafted didn't bother Peyton Manning one bit. And so you're right. That's a sign of a guy that just says, hey, you want to bring in extra competition? That's great. I'll take on that challenge. That's what you want in your quarterback. If they can't do that, then they just don't mentally have it to handle long-term in the NFL.
They don't have the ability to handle adversity. That says all you need to know about him at that point. We got Chris Hernandez coming in. Chris, always good to see you. Hashtag Nick's Orange Juice Fund, because you're not supposed to see the glass, but the glass is too cool. I had to show it off. But anyway, thank you so much. Hashtag click those little thumbs up. We appreciate you, Chris. Drink on. And we got one from WE here as well. Hey, Bawana, reading my mind. Draft best quarterback available if we pick 10, trade Locke for a third or fourth rounder, pick a vet free agent if Rosen can fetch a second. What about Locke? I think Locke right now would probably get a fourth round pick just because the tools are there, and I know that he's making steps in the right direction. So somebody would think, maybe bring him in, be a backup, maybe do a little bit of football rehab. But the stats say he's been one of the 3-5 worst quarterbacks in the NFL this season. And he fell to the second round to begin with. It's not like Sam Darnold, where he went 3 overall and you have that college football pedigree to the extent that Sam Darnold had. So I would say probably an early fourth round pick, but really any guy's worth what a team's willing to pay. All it takes is one team. Let's say Kyle Shanahan met Drew Lock once in the bathroom, and Drew Lock complimented his wristwatch. It's like, I remember that. I really like that Drew Lock guy. He said my wristwatch was cool in the bathroom.
Yeah.
but
I was thinking of was it Bradford that fetched a first round pick?
Multiple times, I think.
Yes, multiple times. So get some injuries. Some teams might be in a panic and need to get a new guy and hope that he could develop into something.
And at that point, honestly, let's say the Broncos did bring in a quarterback, I would just sit on Locke, because you cannot go another season where your backup options are what they've been the past few years. The floor is too low, and Locke has had durability issues too. So you just can't do it.
Right. And if you do bring in another quarterback, I don't mind them keeping Locke either, in the fact that if he does increase his value, then you have a nice trade piece. If not, you got a quality backup. Yeah, exactly. He's so cheap. That's nice to have in the backup position. I'm not saying that he is going to be the backup next year. I think the odds right now are very much in his favor that he's going to be the starting quarterback for the Broncos in 2021.
Yep. And I also see a bunch of people, you guys are right, he'll be 22 in August. I thought he was a little older. I thought he did a mission. So he was going to be a little bit older, but good keeping me on there. Good keeping me honest. We got to check that out. Trey Lance is a year younger than everybody else in this class. Maybe he won't even come out. Maybe you'll see Trey Lance. We have a question right here about Trey Lance. We'll see him transfer to maybe a Florida or something. And then we can really talk about another year. I mean, at that point, I think he'd be odds on favorite for number 1 overall. I saw somebody also ask earlier about Sam Howell and JT Daniels, which Carl, we're not on the same page with JT Daniels. I am just we're talking about tools. So sorry, I just do not see it. But we got Cloud9 TK coming in. It goes down in the DM. Oh, he's talking about my comment earlier. I was like, huh. Okay. What do you think about Trey Lance? May we need to change it up and go dual threat? I think that you have to have some level of athleticism today to make it in the NFL. There's something to be said. I don't think there's going to be any more, at least for how the game is playing right now, no more guys like Tom Brady or Peyton Manning where they're just such statues in the pocket with how often it's not only a quarterback's issue, but it's offensive line issues. They have to be able to create athletically for that developmental phase. It just gives them a margin for error. The offense more too because of that.
The situation that I see that working out for a quarterback is the guys who get onto a team for their second contract that have been a backup.
Yes.
And they've had time to develop their football mind and see things, because that's the biggest issue. The reason that Peyton Manning could still work in 2015, the reason that Tom Brady can still work today, the reason that Drew Brees still works today is because their mind is so advanced football-wise that they can make up for their lack of athleticism. A rookie coming in just cannot do that in today's NFL. So a guy that maybe gets onto a roster, learns for a few years, and then all of a sudden gets that one chance where a starting quarterback goes down with injury, comes in, plays at a high level. That's the only way I can see a pocket passer making it in today's NFL, unless you are also like a Jared Goff going to a great football mind like Sean McVay, and you are the first overall pick, and a team has to commit to you. They have no choice but to give you 3 or 4 years.
That's a good point. And here's something actually I was tweeting out about today. Carl, there is an alternate timeline out there where the Broncos offense has this infrastructure in place a year sooner, or Tom Brady comes out a year later. Mm-hmm. That would have been a match. Tom Brady probably would have wanted to come here. I mean, obviously the Buccaneers have better solidified weapons, but the Broncos have just as much of a plethora, I would say, and an equally good offensive line, at least trending that way. They didn't get a Tristan Wirfs, but like, really, I mean, that might have happened. They were just a year off with each other, and I hate Tom Brady, so I kind of would have really had some issues with that because Peyton Manning is my GOAT. But I mean, really, that would be interesting. I see a lot of comments about Fitzpatrick before. I really think the chat's really directing it towards Fitzpatrick. Let's give the fans what they want here. Okay. What are your thoughts about Fitzpatrick to Denver?
Well, I mean, I really don't mind that one bit because I think he knows his role in the NFL today. I think that's part of the problem that you've seen, like with a Joe Flacco. Mm-hmm. Flacco did not want to admit that he has reached backup level.
Yeah.
He was a starter for all those years. It is hard to transition from being the guy to now being the teacher to the guy.
Yeah.
And I think that Fitzpatrick does a great job working with young quarterbacks. He also has an ability to go out there, win some games for you if you need it. He can provide a spark, as we've seen with Miami, where they've brought him in a couple times, which I think is really interesting how they've handled their quarterback situation this year. I'm not sure I completely agree, but it is what it is. But
my biggest thing is that I just can't see Fangio looking for him because he is such a risk taker. And this team, honestly, this team is so far and away the lead in turnover differential, like not the lead, like far and away last place in turnover differential. Before the games this week, they were negative 18 in turnover differential. And the next highest team was 10. Like that is so much worse than everyone else. It's even hard to fathom. Like that's tiers difference. So I think Ryan Fitzpatrick is somebody that doesn't make sense for the identity of this team for 2021, probably just because he's a big risk taker. Tua's just playing way too conservative. He's checking it down constantly, doesn't trust his offensive line, and just trying to get the ball quickly in space, where Fitzpatrick is throwing it down the field a lot. Very much so, throwing some YOLO balls. But I don't know. I think you're much more likely to see a guy who's much more of a game manager that brings a dual threat ability, such as a Tyrod Taylor or an Andy Dalton, which hurts me a lot. And also Ben Albright just keeps pounding the table for Sam Darnold. I think Sam Darnold's the one that got away for John Elway. And I would not be surprised at all if Sam Darnold was brought in here. We got Mohamed Badri coming back in with the juicy
super sticker.
I love this one because it's got a donk for days, right? They talk about the peach emoji for the butt. Look at this pair, man. Hips. No, I'm just kidding. Thank you so much, Mohamed. We really do appreciate that. I love Fitz. I would probably bring him in. I would have no issue bringing him. I mean, at the least, you're going to have incredible press conferences. But I just don't think
shorts, man.
Oh, I'm about it. The beard needs to go down that far. But I know he needs to. I don't think he's going to fit for us, which is a bummer. Is Nick starting the dating app? Ooh, QBRS. I don't know. We'll figure it out. Are you tall? Do you no, I don't know. John Elway.
Yeah.
Are you a statue quarterback? Mac Jones in the second round, Rasu in the first. I think Mac Jones is going to go in the first. Somebody's going to take a flyer on him in the first. The season's been too good. I'm just saying that he's not my kind of quarterback. It's kind of like the thing where you're talking about, preferences of your dating partners. Some people like blondes, some people like brunettes. I'm out on the immobile quarterbacks. Just not my style, not my type.
He needs to go to a team where he can have a couple years to develop behind a quality starter, learn the offense, then get in there. I do think he is a pretty decent fit with the Shermer offense because he does get the ball out of his hands in a hurry. He's
SEC Case Keenum.
Okay, I'm not disagreeing, but obviously Shermer and Case Keenum had a pretty darn good season.
Yes.
It's not the worst combination, but you're right. It's tough to see that he can make it in the NFL as quickly as you need him to. And also, like you said, there's just going to be limitations to his ceiling. But Rasu in the first, I'm all for that.
Not top 10.
No?
I don't know. I mean, it's so hard to say at this point. He would have to really blow up the combine and be like a difference kind of guy. But like Rasu had all those sacks, but like a lot of them were just long arming, really terrible ACC offensive tackles, like really, really bad. He really needed, and it was 1 year product. He came in as a safety, I think, at Miami and transitioned down to edge, which I mean, what a weird athletic profile. But like you have a guy like, Jason Owa, who didn't have the sacks this year, but pressure rate out just crazy. One of the best athletes in football. He might be just as good, if not better. It's just the edge position is such a jumble this year. Yeah. I would rather trade back and take whichever one falls because I don't see there a clear delineation between a bunch of them.
Okay, I'm not disagreeing completely.
Yeah. Oh, we got a lot of Kyle Trask talk coming in here too.
Uh-oh.
I don't want to hurt people. Projected stat next year if healthy. Phil, Mel. Well, let's see if Phil's here first. And also Melvin Gordon's DUI suspension is going to have a big influence on this as well. But I think this could be a pretty good rushing offense next year. This offensive line really is starting to gel. They're not losing anyone next year. Yeah. I can't depend on Juwan James at all, but like Elijah Wilkinson's looked somewhat competent over the last few games because the whole offensive line is starting to gel. It's the thing. Offensive line, people talk about, get Sewell before the season. Get rid of Bowles, get rid of Sewell. Joe Thomas played for years and years and years on that the Browns offensive line, and they couldn't do crap. It's still a good offensive line, but it's much more about the unit than an individual player.
Right.
And the unit for the Broncos starts to look like it's coming out. It's starting to really show.
Yeah, it is. I love what they're doing. And I think if Melvin Gordon didn't have his suspension coming up, I really think Phil would for sure be gone.
For $3.5 million.
But because of that, because he's going to be gone for those few games, I think that might save Phil for this upcoming season. We'll see how it all plays out. They might do the whole sign and trade thing too.
Yeah,
that's a real possibility with Phil. But no, I think whoever they stick back there, because even Royce Freeman has had some decent runs behind this offensive line. And I think there's a way that Bellamy had some good runs in this last game before he got hurt. So I think there are signs that this is going to be a really strong running team, and you're going to see the play action strong because that's exactly what Drew Lock loves to do. It's what he's best at. But they're going to have to really start doing better in the first half of getting some leads to be able to continue to do that throughout the game. That's part of the problem this year is they have been a terrible first half team. And it just destroys your ability to actually run the football.
Yep, it's been a rough season this year, and there's a lot of toxicity on social media, and that goes well beyond Broncos country getting at each other. I think that's just kind of a state of the world comment right now. Probably a lot to do with the it being an election year and everybody on home, kind of on edge with the sick little bug going around, as your daughter likes to say, Carl. But it'll be interesting to see. We got to get to this last point here from Bob's article, and it's one that, again, I know that it is an interesting take, and this is a true fact, but Bob's last point for the Broncos in the potential for a rookie quarterback this year is lots of teams may need quarterbacks. I think that's true almost every single year, but not many teams are in a position to make an offer like the Broncos are right now personnel infrastructure wise. I think that because of the instability to ownership, because John Elway and Vic Fangio are fighting for their job life next year, that makes it less likely that they would go up for a rookie quarterback. But when you're talking about the infrastructure in place, the nest is built. This whole last offseason, we were talking about building the nest. Build the nest for Locke so that we can get a clean evaluation this year. So that way there's no excuses for him. It's either he's obviously has it or you're back looking for a quarterback. And unfortunately kind of fell in the middle. He missed that Saints game. That might have been a game where he got beat up by another good defense. I mean, the Saints defense is really, really good. And he missed time again with injury. So we didn't get a full clean read. Obviously, it's a weird offseason. I see somebody's in here making really long comments. We appreciate you. Honestly, get at me on Twitter because I would love to have a conversation with you. It's Mike Batt. Mike, see, it covers up my face. We can't have that if you're covering my face, Mike. I'm the money maker here. Carl's got the new glasses. But get at us on Twitter. For real, we will talk. I can't do it during the work hours because I'm busy as heck working on a sick little bug vaccine. But for real, like, let's get after it. And Quentin Sullivan, big Trask fan. And not for me, Quentin. We can agree to disagree there. But the big thing here is he's talking about all these other teams going for quarterback. I think the Broncos are in a unique situation, personnel-wise, where they could make the choice to go up for quarterback. They've been trading back these last few years. They've had ample picks in the top 100. They have one of the younger rosters in the NFL, and the offensive infrastructure. It's like the Bills, the year they traded back from the Patrick Mahomes pick. 10 overall, the Chiefs came up for Patrick Mahomes. And the Bills are doing work on quarterbacks, but they traded back from Patrick Mahomes, which looks terrible on the surface. But Sean McDermott said, we were looking at quarterbacks. This roster was not built for a young quarterback to come in here and succeed just yet. We didn't have the culture. We didn't have the people in place. And then the next year, they gather all these resources. They do everything they can to be in that 2018 quarterback market and then go get a guy. And Josh Allen, obviously, toolsiest quarterback in the NFL. Probably he's what people wanted Cam Newton to be, except he figured out the accuracy.
Yep.
Which Cam Newton never really did, as we're seeing this year as his arm talent and athleticism depreciates.
Right.
But this Broncos team right now, it is set for a quarterback to come in. There's really you can make excuses for Locke with the weird offseason, which people are saying next year is going to be, give him a regular offseason next year. Sounds like next year's offseason is going to be weird too. I'm sorry, guys. This sick little bug is not totally going away. Obviously, who knows what the future is going to hold exactly. We could have an asteroid get hit the Earth in January. That who knows? But it sounds like it's going to be another weird abbreviated OTAs, virtual OTAs. So it's going to be another one. And is it going to be an excuse again? I don't know. I'm really tired of excuses. There are valid ones, but it's like at some point, if the guy's good enough, he puts up or shuts up.
Yep.
And he doesn't have the best tools in the NFL where you're like, you know what, we might as well wait on it because if he hits, he's going to be pushing for the best quarterback in football. I mean, Josh Allen is pushing for Aaron Rodgers and Patrick Mahomes right now. For real. Will it be sustainable? We'll see, but like for real. So
yeah,
I don't know. So the biggest thing, again, the main point, I'm ranting. Other teams are going to be in the quarterback market. I don't think every single team is in a position to give up multiple capital and to have a quarterback come in day one and be a guy that can grow with a nest that is built. This team is built for a quarterback to come in right now and that quarterback to succeed unless there are injuries, unless Patrick Shermer's not the guy. Those are two things that can happen. But roster-wise, it's built.
It is. And I'd say also the nice thing for the Broncos is I don't think they have to go and sacrifice as much draft capital as some of these other teams. Because they do have some pieces like Tim Patrick. I know that there are teams out there right now who highly value Tim Patrick, who look at him and say, this is a guy that we want to go after this offseason, even if the Broncos put a restricted free agent tag on him of a first or second round pick.
Yeah.
So that's a guy. I mean, Philip Lindsay is another. Nick, you sound real delusional.
You sound like Eric. Please expand upon that because I said many things that could have been delusional. I want specifics. If you're going to say that, let me defend myself just a little bit. But you know what? Bring it. I don't care. We're just here talking ball. And if you disagree, let me know. More power to you. I'm about that. As long as you can do it come from an intellectual point rather than an emotional point. If you're coming here talking emotions, then we're not talking about the same level. We're coming at a different vantage point. Also, Nick, go Big Red. That hurts me, Brent.
And who are they, Carl? Is that talking about like teams wanting Tim Patrick? Which teams want Tim Patrick? I think any wide receiver needy team is going to want Tim Patrick because he's proven that he can look like a decent number one or at least a decent number two, which is still a quality player in the NFL today. So yes, it is. Okay. Yes, there are a lot of teams that are going to be looking at Tim Patrick, and the Broncos have that ability with Sutton coming back, Jerry Jeudy and Hamler being in their second year. I think they still have some other wide receivers. Cleveland is another one that I think that they could really develop into a decent player, nothing too big. Some
Emotions are for the weak.
But so yes, they do have a trade piece there where he could be worth maybe a second round pick value for a team this season. And so when you're trading up from say 8, which let's just say that's the average, falling between 5 and 15, probably somewhere in there, depending on if they win or lose. But so you're right. The infrastructure is there not only to have the players available for a rookie to succeed, but it's also for the team to be able to trade and not completely trade away the entire future to go get their guy. Yeah.
No, I mean, the big thing with trading Patrick is about just how far along Cortland Sutton is with his very serious knee injury. If you get green flag there, then I'm interested in that. But and I do have some emotion, guys. I'm just talking about if we're coming to the debate stage, try to set those emotions aside. Try to be as robot as possible. But my point for Drew Lock, I think Drew Lock can still be a good quarterback. I am not sure if he will end up being a quarterback that can win you Super Bowls. I think there's a real question here. I don't think the Matt Stafford's ceiling is as attainable. He does not have the arm talent that Matt Stafford had coming out, and or the Jay Cutler arm talent, which Jay Cutler was a total stick in the mud. And that's putting it nicely. But it will be interesting to see what happens. And Nick, what's your okay? Guys, we do not have enough time to get to all these. It's already an hour, but we're going to be back again Tuesday, and the offseason is just starting. Like, it's just starting. We're going to have plenty of time to talk. And if you disagree with me and you can come out here and talk about it, I love it. I love to have a good debate. I'm trying to learn the whole time. I don't know all the answers. I'm trying to improve. I thought Josh Allen would bust because he wasn't accurate enough. You live and learn. You know, there's things about it every single day. The game changes, etc. So Nick, what's your knock on Trask besides lack of mobility? To me, he actually reads the field and wouldn't need much development. Lance is a high risk, high reward. Fields got crushed by Indiana and Northwestern. Well, you know, there are some bad games. Remember Peyton Manning when he went against the Falcons in 2012? Threw 3 interceptions, I think a pick 6 as well. If you can find any quarterback having a bad game, you still got to go back to the larger sample size, the body of work. And most of the starts from Justin Fields are incredible. We're going to see him in the playoffs. It's going to be big for his overall body of work. But I mean, there's a lot of high end traits and a lot of high end tape. With Kyle Trask, I just see so much of his tape to me, and I think he's got solid downfield accuracy, but a lot of it is just he doesn't have great arm talent. You know, the ball does not pop out of his hand. You can see it different. Like with watching Justin Herbert, the ball comes out differently. It just pops. It sounds different even when you're on the field. But with Trask, I just think there's not enough of that X factor trait where he's going to be so dependent on his line, on the guys around him. And you can win that way. It's just, it takes such a perfect structured roster for him to maximize his talent. Right. So I'm out. Somebody else wants to take him, by all means. Right. You know, by all means. He could succeed. There's too much there for me to go that way.
Right. It's kind of like, and I keep coming back to this, Derek Carr. Derek Carr has more arm talent than Trask did coming out.
Yes, he does.
And he's a little bit more athletic.
More mobile too.
Yes. But at the same time, he is kind of that pocket passer kind of quarterback but he needs a good offensive line in front of him.
And they've sunk so much cost in that offensive line, and it's made the defense crap.
Yes. So that's the problem when you take a quarterback like that. You said you got to have playmakers. You got to have a great offensive line. You got to have so much invested in the offense to make it work that, like I said, you're then hurting the defense. And when he hasn't had a great offensive line in front of him, Derek Carr has been a bottom 10 quarterback. He has really struggled. And even when they've had a great offensive line in front of him, he's had his times of not trusting them to hold up. So super chat coming in here from Father Ridge. Just Zach Wilson with exclamation marks.
You said that almost like a question. I need a little bit more gumption there. Looks like
Zach Wilson.
There you go. 5 exclamation points there. But yeah, no, it will be interesting. Carl, we're already at an hour and 5 minutes, and I know we're not supposed to go over, and we have so many good super chats coming in here. But guys, I do want to at least prep you guys this week for the draft conversation. Now, obviously, I'm somebody who I try to be really analytical, and I've said earlier, don't be emotional, just bring analytics and intelligence to the conversation. I'm so emotional. I go into every game like, well, probably overall, since the Broncos are out of the playoffs, it'd be better if they lost long-term because they move up the draft order. And that's like moving from the 10th to the 15th overall pick is like the value of a mid-second round pick. So if you win this week, you have the chance of just burning a mid-second round pick for nothing. Like that's the type of value difference that you're talking. But as soon as the game kicks off, you bet your freaking rear end that I am cheering for the team.
Right.
And that analytics, very cold approach goes out the window as soon as the game kicks off. I'm sorry. I feel like other fan bases are like that as well. Unless you're in the Trevor Lawrence sweepstakes, you also bet your sweet rear end that if the Broncos were 0-15 right now, I'd be pulling for them to finish it, because imagine going 1-15 and missing out on Trevor Lawrence in the last game of the year. But anyway, that's beside the point. Scenarios for this week. And let me pull this up real quick. Let me see if I can share my screen. Let's just do it.
Let me get to Paul's question here real quick while you're doing that. Paul coming in here with the last second super chat. Really appreciate that, Paul, and always appreciate seeing you on the show. Do you think Elway makes a draft splash entering his last year on contract? You two are the best. Paul, you are the best. There's no doubt about that.
I love Paul.
He could. Elway is Elway hasn't really made a whole lot of splashes in the draft. If anything, he usually trades back. He traded up for Paxton Lynch, but that wasn't a huge trade up by any means. Otherwise, most drafts, the Noah Fant draft obviously traded back. Was looking to trade back from pick number 5 when they took
Bradley Chubb.
Bradley Chubb, yes. Sorry,
they also looked to trade up.
They did. Well, that's true for a quarterback. They did look to trade up, and that got blown up. But then they were looking to trade back.
You guys still have been looking for a new hiking gear.
There you go.
That ad there. Those darn cookies.
Yeah, I could see him if he really falls in love with one of these quarterbacks, which has happened. Like we're talking like Sam Darnold kind of love.
And Baker Mayfield.
Yeah, he loved those guys. I can't emphasize that enough. He was willing to trade about almost anything. The Giants asked for way too much at the end, and they kind of ran out of time, and I still can't believe the Giants didn't take the deal, considering they took a running back at number 2.
They also tried to trade up to number 1 overall that year with the Browns.
They did. You're right.
Yes.
So anyway, I could see it if he really falls in love with the guy.
Yeah.
It's just going to take a lot to convince them with Drew Lock in the building, because back then when Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield, they did not have a quarterback at all.
No. Trevor Siemian years, man, what a blip. But anyway, guys, now to talk a little bit of draft scenarios this week. I have the Tankathon here, which has been a website of choice over the last few years, unfortunately, given the pit of misery that the Broncos have been in. But you see the Broncos sit here at the 10th overall spot right now with a catastrophic, let's just call it a catastrophic strength of schedule, 5-6-7. It's not like the New York Jets, which are, oh my God, 5.592. This Jets team is actually pretty solid to bounce back next year. They've been better than their record for sure. But Broncos sitting here at 10th overall. The teams above them, the Broncos theoretically could jump all the way up to 5th overall. That would take the Cincinnati Bengals, the Philadelphia Eagles, the Detroit Lions, the New York Giants, and the Carolina Panthers all winning while the Broncos lose to the Raiders. Broncos also, though, so we were talking about 5 up, they could also fall all the way to 15th overall. And that is, again, because of the strength of schedule. You can see here they have the highest of everybody within that range, and that's not going to change next week because almost every single one of these games is interdivisional. So the strength of schedule is not going to move hardly at all. The only 2 teams that could really change this for the Broncos is if the Steelers and the Titans lose, and even then I don't think that's going to change them for any tiebreakers. So Broncos are going to lose every single tiebreaker for whatever team they come up against in the draft. That's just how it's going to be this year, unfortunately. But the Broncos win, and let's say the Cowboys, the Chargers, the Vikings, and the Patriots, and the 49ers win, all teams that are 6 wins right now. If they all lose, yes, you're correct. Excuse me. At this point, I'm considering that winning for them. That's why Tankathon has the 1-3 in red, as in if it's bad, where the WAS 14 is a different green because that's good, because this is about getting the highest pick possible. But the Broncos could drop all the way to 15th overall. I think in the end, if the Broncos lose, you probably see them up at 8 or 9. If they win, you could see them drop all the way down to 13 or 14, because these teams have easier matchups this week overall where they should win. So it will be interesting, no doubt. And now we got there we go. So it will be interesting to see what happens. But in the end, man, it's going to be a bummer. And we got Kenneth Booker coming in here. Do they lose the tiebreaker to Atlanta since they lost head-to-head? Head-to-head does not matter. when it comes to the draft, it's farther down. Oh, we're getting the wrap it up from Buwana as well. We haven't had a wrap it up in a long time, Carl. You guys cannot give me a hard time anymore. The dog's been crying in the background, and you guys quit giving me a hard time about that. But the strength of schedule is the primary tiebreaker. And if it's not strength of schedule, if the strength of schedule is the same and they are both in the AFC, then I think it goes to record versus teams with winning opponents. If they're in opposite conferences, so the same conference, it's a record against winning opponents. That's what happened a few years ago when the Broncos picked 10th. The Bills and the Broncos had the exact same strength of schedule, but the Broncos had a better record against winning opponents. So the Bills got to pick 9 and the Broncos picked 10. However, if it's opposite conferences, it's a coin flip. So that's what happened a few years ago with the Raiders and the 49ers. And the Raiders picked, I don't even remember what they are, but the 49ers got to pick before the Raiders because the 49ers won a coin flip. Why the hell are those the tiebreakers? I don't know. That just makes no sense to me. But we got to wrap it up, guys. Carl, any thoughts before we get out of here? Do we have any super chats that we need to get to? 2-hour pod. If you want a 2-hour pod, how does a 5-hour pod sound for you guys? That's when we do the draft pods. Okay. Talk about a marathon. My voice, I literally had no voice after that.
Yes. Yeah, I had to preach the next day and my mouth was not moving as I'm trying to preach. But no, those are always a great time. And yeah, we'll have some of those as we get closer to the draft or when we get to the draft. Very excited for that. Wish we could be here for 2 hours, but no, I'm excited. Next season or next week.
Did we get to this one?
Yeah, we did.
Yes. Paul, you're the best still. I want to bring it up again.
But yeah, next week officially for sure kicks off season talk, and very excited to get into that. I know it means the season has not gone the way we hoped, but also there's a lot of great things to look forward to for 2021 with the Broncos. I think they have a lot of pieces in place, and they have a lot of opportunities with the cap and how it's set up for this next season to really make some big splashes moving forward.
Yep, you are absolutely correct. Well, guys, we got to get out of here. I know it went for a while, but we really appreciate you, everybody who stuck around. And guys, if you do like this show, follow us on Twitter. You can follow this Building the Broncos, of course. You can follow Carl at Carl Dumler MHH and myself at Nick Kendell MHH. And also, as always, I like to say, follow John as well. Follow Buwana Beast. He is the man at John K MHH. That's JONKAY MHH. Give him a follow as well. He is so helpful. We wouldn't be able to do this without him. So we really appreciate him around here. Again, behind the scenes, but first in our hearts. Make sure you also head on over to milehighhuddle.com for all of our written content and MHH community content. I'm waiting for the draft order to be set, but there's mocks coming, guys. There's plenty of offseason content. It's even though the Broncos are not ending up where you wanted to this year, I think things are decently bright. Obviously, the ownership situation, Justin Herbert and Mahomes in the division, there's reason to worry. There's reason to worry, but there's still a lot that's working right in Dove Valley right now. That should have folks excited. Head on over to iTunes and leave us a 5-star rating and a comment. Also on YouTube, probably the most important, like, subscribe, and share wherever you are on social media. That's probably the best thing you can do for us. It really helps us continue to reach new listeners and, maybe some old listeners. Maybe bring them back in. Who knows? It's been a weird year. Holidays are over. Maybe it's time to bring them back in. Also, guys, like, laugh, heart react, fire emoji, whatever it is you can do on Facebook these days for those live streams. Do that as well. All of that can help us continue to bring you these Denver Bronco deep dives. Follow us on Twitter at Mile High Huddle and at BTB Football Pod. Carl, we got a meeting coming up here pretty soon that we got to get out of here.
Yeah. So we're going to get some draft talk and get prepared for the draft season. So everybody get excited.
But Eric and I are going to throw hands over J.C. Horn versus Caleb Farley.
But all right. Well, everybody, thank you again for coming in, tuning in, and we will be back next Tuesday. Very excited to see where the Broncos are going to be picking and start talking what they can do to build for 2021. Go Broncos.
Appreciate everyone in here. Go Broncos. Stay safe.